Hey folks, in this episode I'm going to show you how to make this Halloween pumpkin scene here. Pumpkins come in many different varieties, shapes and sizes. So instead of making a standard pumpkin, we're going to make this sweet dumpling pumpkin. So without further ado, let's get to it. So open up Blender, we're going to go to Edit, Preferences, and under Add-ons we're going to search for Node and then enable the Node Wrangler here. We'll then search for Loop and we'll enable Loop Tools here. Once you've enabled those, we're going to click this button and click Save Preferences, and that will ensure the add-ons load every time you load Blender. I'll then close this window here. I'm going to take my cursor to the bottom left of the 3D viewport until I see a crosshair. I'll left click and drag up and open up a new window. We'll then change this from the 3D viewport to the shader editor. I'll just hit N to hide the N panel. I'm going to zoom in. This is a node group I made from a previous tutorial. In short, it contains all the color data for real world metals. I'll just delete that. I'll just increase my 3D viewport. I'll take the default cube. I'm going to hit delete. I'm going to hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'll hit Shift A. I'm going to go mesh and I'll choose UV sphere. I'll navigate to the bottom left and expand the UV sphere options down here. I'm going to change the segments to 24 and I'll reduce the rings to, let's say, 12. I'll just collapse these options. I'll then tab into edit mode. I'll hit number 1 for vertice select, so that's the vertice. Number 2 is edge select, and number 3 is face select. So I'm going to hit number 1 for vertice select. I'm going to select this bottom vertice down here. Just going to zoom in. I'll then hit O for proportional editing. Alternatively, you can enable or disable it here. I'll then hit G, Z. I'm going to hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it up to around about there. I'll select this top vertice. Again, I'm going to hit G, Z, I'm going to hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it down to round about there. I'll hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'm going to hit number 2 for edge select. I'm going to hold down Shift, Alt, and left click select that edge a couple of times until we've got the entire edge loop selected. I'll hold down Shift, Alt, and left click select this edge, so we've got 2 edges in between. Hold down Shift, Alt, left click select this edge, and we're going to do the same all the way round. So you should have all these edges selected. I'll then hit number 1 for vertice select. I'm going to toggle on X-ray view. I'll then hit C for circle select, and I'll take my cursor to the center vertices. I'll then click my middle mouse button and that will deselect those vertices. I'll then right click and that should toggle off circle select. I'm just going to orbit round in my 3D viewport. I'm going to toggle off X-ray view. I'll then hit O to disable proportional editing. I'll hit S, Shift Z, and that will scale on all axes excluding the Z axes. And I'll just bring these in to, let's say, around about there. I'll tab out of edit mode. I'm going to navigate to my modifier tab over here. I'll then click add modifier. We go to generate and we'll choose subdivision surface. I'm going to set this to level 2. I'll right click and select shade smooth. I'll then tab into edit mode, and with those edges selected, I'm going to hit number 2. I'll then hit N to open up the N panel, and under this item tab up here, I'm going to increase the mean crease to about 0.5. I'll then hit N to close the N panel, and I'll tab out of edit mode. I'll then navigate to my modifiers tab over here. I'm going to increase the levels for the viewport to 3. I'll then click this arrow icon and I'll click apply. I'll then take my cursor to the top left and change it from object mode to vertex paint. And on this top bar here where it says paint, we'll select that and we'll choose dirty vertex colors. We'll then navigate to the bottom left and expand the dirty vertex colors options down here. We'll then change the blur iterations to 2. Again, I'll navigate to the toolbar at the top here. I'll select paint and we'll run the dirty vertex colors one more time. I'll then change it from vertex paint to object mode. I'll then navigate to my outliner and I'll rename this object to Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin. I'll then expand my shader editor. I'm going to click new and I'll rename the material to Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin. In fact, we're going to need a bit more room, so I'll just increase this window. I'll then toggle on material preview. I'll hit Shift A. I'm going to go color and we'll choose mix color. I'll pop that here. I'm going to set socket A to green. I'll set socket B to orange. I'll then plug the result from the mix color node into the base color of the principal BSDF. I'll then hit Shift A. I'm going to go input and I'll choose color attribute and I'll pop that over here. I'll then click in this box and I'll select attribute, and that attribute came from the dirty vertex colors. I'll then plug this color socket into the factor of the mix color node. I'll then hit Shift A. I'm going to go converter and we'll choose color ramp and I'll pop that in between there. I'll change the interpolation type from linear to B-spline. I'll then drag this black flag all the way across over to round about there. Maybe I can reduce it slightly, maybe let's say 0.5. I want to add some green speckles on this. That's easy enough. I'll just drag this mix color node over to here. I'll hit Shift A. I'm going to go color and we'll choose mix color. And I pop that in between the color ramp and the mix color node. I'll then plug the result from this color ramp into socket B. And for socket A, I'm going to set this to black. I'll then hit Shift A. I'm going to go texture and we'll choose noise texture. I'll pop that over here. And with the noise texture selected, I'm going to hit Control T. And that will add a texture coordinate and a mapping node. I'll then change the coordinates from generated to object. I'll change the noise texture from 3D to 4D. I'm going to set the scale to 10 and the detail to 4. I'll then connect the factor from the noise texture into the mix factor of the mix color node. I'll hit Shift A. I'm going to go converter and I'll choose color ramp. And I pop that in between there. I'm going to change the interpolation type from linear to ease. And with this black flag selected, I'm going to select the position to 0.333. And with the white flag, I'm just going to drag this across to bring it back. Maybe something around there. Maybe I can just tone down the black flag a bit to round about there. Okay, excellent. Just bring this down, bring this down. Of course, in real life, you get colour variations, and at the moment, we've just got a solid green colour and a solid yellow colour. So I'm going to add a few more nodes to give a bit more colour variation. So I'm just going to drag this node up to round about there. I'll then hit Shift A. I'm going to go colour, and I'll choose mix colour. And I pop this here. I'll then hover my cursor over the green colour swatch on the mix colour node. I'm going to hit Control C to copy that colour. I'll then take my cursor to these two colour swatches. I'm going to hit Control V to paste and Control V to paste again. And in socket B, I'm going to select that colour and I'm going to brighten it up and maybe give it a bit more saturation. Maybe something around there perhaps. Maybe I'll bring it back down on the yellow to around about there. I'll then plug the result from this mix colour into socket A. I'll just zoom out a bit. I'll then select this noise texture node here. I'm going to hit Control Shift D. And that will duplicate the node whilst maintaining the connection to the previous node, and I'll pop that up there. And for this noise texture node, I'm going to set the scale to 40. I'll then plug the factor from this noise texture into the factor of the mix color node. I'll then hit Shift A, I'm going to go converter, and I'll choose color ramp, and I'll pop that in between there. I'm going to change the interpolation type from linear to B-spline, and on this color ramp, I'm going to click this button and choose flip color ramp. And with the white flag selected, I'm going to set the position to, let's say, 0.35. I'll then drag this black flag all the way across to round about there. So now we've got variation on this green. We're just going to add some variation for the orange. So I'll just drag these down. I'll hit Shift A. I'm going to go color and we'll choose mix color and I'll pop that up here. I'll then hover my cursor over the color swatch on this mix color node. I'm going to hit Control C to copy. I'll then hover my cursor over socket A on this mix color node. I'll hit Control V and we'll do the same for this one, Control V. For this top color swatch, I'll click here. And I'm just going to make this a bit more orange, maybe something around there perhaps. Maybe I'll increase the saturation. I think I'm happy with these two colours. We can adjust this a bit later if we need to. So again, I'm going to select my noise texture node. I'm going to hit Control Shift D to duplicate the node whilst maintaining the connection to the previous node. And I'll pop that up there. I'll change the scale for this noise texture to 8. I'll then connect the factor from the noise texture into the mix factor of the mix color node. And I'll plug the result from this mix color node into socket B of this mix color node. I'll just take this mix color node, I'm going to hit G, just bring it up here, just so we can see where everything's going. I'll then hit Shift A, I'm going to go converter, and we'll choose color ramp, and I'll pop that in between there. I'm going to change the interpolation type from linear to ease. I'll then click this arrow button, and I'll choose flip color ramp. I'm going to drag this white flag all the way across to round about there, maybe 0.4. And I'll drag the black flag all the way across to round about there. Now you can see we're kind of getting these orange splotches all around. Excellent. Okay, this is coming along quite nicely. We've got a nice bit of variation going on there. Next up, I think we need to add some bump to this pumpkin. I'll select this noise texture. I'm going to hit Control Shift D to duplicate the node. Maybe for this noodle, I'm going to hold down Shift, right click and drag, and that will add a control point there. I'll then hit G and just bring this across just so we can see where it's going. For this noise texture, I'm going to set the scale to 2.5. I'll then hit Shift A, we go to vector and we choose bump. And I'll pop that over here. I'll then connect the factor socket into the height socket of the bump node. I'll then connect the normal socket from the bump node into the normal socket of the principal BSDF. Maybe I can box select these nodes here. I'm going to hit G, just drag these across over to there. I'll also bring this bump node over to here. I'll zoom into the bump node and I'm going to set the distance to, let's say, 0.1. So this is our first level of bump. We're going to add another level of bump. So with this noise texture selected, I'm going to hit Control Shift D to duplicate. And I'll pop it down here. And for this noise texture, I'm going to set the scale to 5. I'll then hit Shift A, we go color, and we choose mix color. I'll connect the factor from this noise texture into socket B. For socket A, I'm going to set this to black. I'll then connect the factor from this noise texture into the factor of the mix color node. I'll then change the mix type to add, and I'll plug the result from this mix color node into the height factor of the bump node. Okay, that's looking a lot better. Maybe we can reduce the strength of the bump to, let's say, 0.075. So I think now we just need to add a bit of roughness. So I'm going to take this noise texture, I'm going to hit Ctrl-Shift-D to duplicate, and I'm going to pop it up here. I'll then change the scale to 5. I'll connect the factor from the noise texture into the roughness socket of the principal BSDF. I'll then hit Shift-A, I'm going to go Converter, and I'll choose Color Ramp, and I'll pop that in between there. I'll change the interpolation type from linear to ease, and on the color ramp with the black flag selected, I'm going to change the value on the color to, let's say, 0.25. I'll then select the white flag, and I'm going to reduce the value to, let's say, 0.75. I think we just need to fine tune these noise textures, because at the moment they've all got a W factor of 0. So I'll select this noise texture up here. I'll then give a random value to the W factor. I'll do the same for this noise texture here. We'll choose a random value. Do the same for this noise texture here. We'll give a random value, and we'll do the same for the rest of these. Okay, so that's completely randomized now. Excellent. In my 3D viewport, I'm going to hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'm going to hit numpad period, and that will zoom in to the selected object. I'll then hit Control Alt numpad 0. And that will align my camera to the 3D viewport. I'll select my camera. I'll navigate to my object data tab over here. I'm just going to ensure that the X location is set to 0. Maybe I'll set the Y location to -5, and maybe I'll set the Z location to, let's say, 0.05. For the final result, this will be rendered in cycles. Before we move on, it's a good idea to save the project. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save my project as Like and Subscribe. Thanks folks, you absolute legends. And then click Save As. From here, I think we can move on to modelling the stem. I'm just going to give us a bit more room in our 3D viewport. I'm going to hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'll navigate to my outliner, and I'm just going to hide the pumpkin from the 3D viewport. I'll then hit Shift-A, I'm going to go Curve, and I'll choose Path. I'll tab into Edit Mode. I'm going to hit G, I'm going to hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm just going to bring this first point into the centre of the origin here. I'll then change my pivot point to 3D Cursor. I'll hit R, Y, 90 minus, hit Enter. I'll then hit S to scale. I'm going to hold down Control to snap it in increments. I'll then hold down Shift to snap it in finer increments, and I'll bring it to around about there. Tab out of Edit Mode. In my outliner, I'm going to rename this object to Stem. I'll navigate to my Curve Data tab down here. I'll then expand the geometry options. Instead of using the depth option to create thickness on this curve, I'm going to add another curve in the scene, and we'll use that as the thickness. So I'm going to hit Shift-A, I'm going to go Curve, we'll choose Circle. I'll hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'll then tab into Edit Mode. I'm going to select all the points. I'll right click and I'll choose Subdivide. I'll then navigate to the bottom left until I see the subdivide options down here, and I'm going to add 2 cuts. I'll then select this point here. I'm going to skip a point, hold down Shift, select this point. We'll skip a point, hold down Shift, select this one, and do this all the way around until you got all of these points selected. I'll then hit S to scale this in to around about there. Tab out of Edit Mode. In my outliner, I'm going to rename this object to Thickness Profile. I'll then hit numpad 1. I'll then select the stem object. I'll navigate to my Curve Data tab over here, and under Bevel, I'm going to select Object, and that object will be the Thickness Profile. Obviously, that's way too thick, so I'll navigate to my outliner and select the Thickness Profile object. I'll then tab into Edit Mode. I'm going to hit A couple of times just to ensure that I've got all the vertices selected. I'll then hit S and scale this in to round about there perhaps. Tab out of Edit Mode. I want a taper on this object, so I want the base to be thick and the top to be thin. In order to do that, I'm going to add another curve. So I'm going to hit Shift-A, I'm going to go Curve, and we choose Bezier Curve. I hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'll then hit G, X, I'm going to hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to move it to around about there. In my outliner, I'm going to rename this object to Taper Object. I'll then hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'm going to hit R, X, 90, and then hit Enter. I'll then select my stem in the 3D viewport, and under your Object Data tab over here, where it says Taper Object under Geometry, we'll click this Taper Object box here and select the Taper Object curve. I'll then select the Taper Object. I'll tab into Edit Mode. I'm going to change the pivot point from 3D Cursor to Median Point. I'll then select this point here. I'll hit R, hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to snap it so it's 100% flat. I'll then hit G, Z, hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it up to round about there. I'll then select this point here. I'm going to hit G, Z, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it up to there. So for this point here, I'm going to hit R, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring this down so it's around about 45 degrees. I'll then hit S, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it down to round about there. I'll then select this point of the curve. I'm going to hit S, and I'm going to scale it up to round about there. Tab out of edit mode. I'm going to select my stem object. Maybe I can hide my camera from the viewport. I'll unhide the pumpkin in the 3D viewport. And with your stem object selected, I'm going to hit G, Z, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it up to round about there perhaps. And maybe I'll hit S, hold down Control, and I'm going to scale it down to around about there. Maybe I'll hit G, Z, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I just want a little bit of intersection here. In fact, I think we need to bring the top of the pumpkin in a bit. So I'm going to navigate to my 3D viewport. I'm going to hide the stem. I'll select my pumpkin. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'm going to hit 1 to go into vertice select. I'll select this middle vertice here. I'll then orbit round in my 3D viewport. I'm going to hit O to enable proportional editing, which is up here. I'm going to ensure that I've got sharp interpolation selected. I'll then hit G, Z, and I'm going to bring this down to, let's say, around about there. Okay, tab out of edit mode. I'll go to my outliner and I'll re-enable the stem in the viewport. I'll then select for stem. I'm going to hit G, Z, and I'm just going to bring it down to round about there. I'm going to hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'll then select these 3 points here. I'll hit O to disable proportional editing. I'm going to hit G. I'm going to bring these around. Maybe I'll select these 2. I'll hit G, bring these around, and I'll select this one. I'm going to hit G, and I'll bring this around to round about there. And with this endpoint selected, I'm going to hit Control T, and that should twist the endpoint. I'll then hit 90 for 90 degrees, and I'll hit Enter. I'll then select the base point down here. I'll hit Control T, I'll hit 90 and minus, and that will twist it in the opposite direction. I'll then tab out of edit mode. So we've got this twisted stem now. Excellent. I'll just increase my shader editor window. And for the material, this is going to be pretty easy because we're going to copy the material from the pumpkin and just make a couple of minor changes. So in my shader editor, I'm going to click this button here and I'm going to choose the sweet dumpling pumpkin material. And if you notice on the stem, we need to fill the end cap here. So I'll navigate to my curve data tab over here, and under bevel, we're going to enable fill caps. So the first thing you'll notice is we haven't got these masks here because this was done with dirty Vertex colors. So we need a way of adding a similar mask to this stem, and we're going to achieve that with a pointless value. So we're going to zoom in, and for the material, I'm going to click this 2 button, and that will make it its own unique material. So if you make any changes in the shader editor, it won't affect the pumpkin. And I'll rename this material to Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin Stem. And the first thing to remove will be this color attribute node here. So I'm going to take that color attribute node, I'm going to hit delete, I'll then hit Shift A, I'm going to go input, and we'll choose geometry. We'll then connect the pointless socket into this color ramp where we had the color attribute node. At this point, we'll need to switch to cycles because the pointless values do not work in Eevee. So I'm going to navigate to my render tab over here. I'm going to change it from Eevee to cycles. I'll also change my render device to GPU. I'll enable render preview. I'm going to click this button here and I'm going to disable scene lights and scene world, and that should enable the default HDR in Blender. I'll then navigate to this color ramp where we've got the pointless plugged in. I'm going to change the interpolation type from B-spline to ease. I'll then drag this white flag all the way across to around about there, and we'll just keep dragging these flags until you've got a reasonable result. So now I'm going to change the colors of this top mix color node. For this top color, I'm going to go with like a brown color, maybe something around there. And for this bottom color, I'm going to change this to kind of a yellow, but a low saturation yellow, maybe something around there perhaps. I'm going to change the scale on this top noise texture to 25. I'll then navigate down here to this noise texture here, and I'm going to change the scale on this one to, let's say, 12.5. I'll now delete this noise texture here, which is plugged into the roughness. So I'm going to hit delete, and I'll drag the result from this mix color node into the color ramp for the roughness. I'm going to change the scale on this noise texture to 10, and I'll change the scale on this noise texture to 5. I'm going to adjust the colour ramp for the brown and the yellows. I want a bit more dark brown in the scene, so I'm just going to drag this flag all the way across over to around about there. And also, maybe we can stretch this texture a little bit. So I'm going to go to my mapping node down here, and the scale for the Z, I'm going to type in 0.75, and that will just stretch the textures ever so slightly. I think maybe we can adjust this pointless colour ramp as well. So I'm just going to bring this in. And maybe for this yellow colour, I can tone this down ever so slightly. Okay. I might also increase the distance on my bump node to 0.125. And on my colour ramp, which plugs into the roughness, I'm I'm going to click this button. I'll click flip color ramp. I'm going to change the position of the white flag to 0.25 and the position of the darker flag to 0.75. And with the white flag selected, I'm going to change the value to, let's say, 0.85. I'll then select the darker flag and I'm going to change the value of this to, let's say, 0.5. I'll just hit numpad 0 to go into camera view just to see what we've got. I'll reposition the camera. So I'm going to enable it in 3D viewport. I'll then select my camera. I'm going to go to my object data tab down here. I'm going to drag it up on the z-axis to maybe around about there. So that's half a meter. Maybe I can bring the camera back on the y-axis to, let's say, 6 meters. And I'm going to decrease the X rotation ever so slightly, just so it's framed in the camera. So I'm just going to go into solid view. In my outliner, I'm going to select the stem. I'm going to hold down control, select the dumpling, hold down control, select the taper object, and we'll also select the thickness profile. I'll then hit M to move to collection. I'll select create collection and I'll rename this to Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin. I'll hit enter. We'll then click create. And now all of those objects should be moved to a collection called Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin. I'll then select the pumpkin object. I'm going to zoom in. I'll tap into edit mode. I'll enable X-ray view and you should have that center vertice selected. So with the center vertice selected, I'm going to hit Control plus and that will increase the selection. I'm going to keep hitting Control plus until I've got around about that many vertices selected. I'll then disable X-ray view. In fact, I might have a few more. So I'm going to hit Control plus a few more times. So I'm going to go with that many vertices. It doesn't have to be precise. I'll then hit P and we'll choose separate by selection. I'll then tab out of edit mode. So now if I select that top piece and if I hit G, you should see that the top of the pumpkin is separate from the rest of the pumpkin. I'll then right click that back in place. I'll navigate to my outliner over here and I'll rename that top object to Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin Lid. I'll hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'll navigate to my outliner and I'm going to disable the Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin collection. We're now going to move on to creating the face, which we're going to use to carve into the pumpkin. So I'm going to hit Shift A, I'm going to go Mesh, and we'll choose Plane. I'll tap into Edit Mode. I'm going to hit RX90, hit Enter. I'll then hit SZ.25, hit Enter. Control R, and we'll add a loop cut in the center there. I hit G, Z, hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it down to around about there. I'll then hit Control B, and that'll add a bevel. I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel until I've got around about 8 cuts. And I'm going to drag it out to around about there, just so the vertices are evenly spaced. I'll then select this vertice here. I'm going to hold down Control and then left click select this vertice. So we've got this entire edge loop selected. I'm going to hit G, Z, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it down to around about there. I'll then select this vertice. I'm going to hold down Shift, left click select this vertice. I'm going to hit O to enable proportional editing. I'll then hit G, Z, and I'm going to adjust my proportional editing until I've got something that I like to around about there. I'll hold down Shift, out, and left click select this entire edge loop here. O to disable proportional editing. G, Z, hold down Control to snap it in increments, and I'm going to bring it up to, let's say, around about there. I'm going to select this top center vertice up here. I'll hit G, Z, and I'm going to bring it down to around about there. Maybe I'll select these two vertices here, G, Z, and I'm going to bring these up to around about there. Maybe I'll select this vertice, G, Z, and I'm going to bring this down to around about there. I'll select this vertice and this vertice. I'm going to hit G, Z, and I'm going to bring these up to around about there. Maybe I'll make this one a bit bigger. G, Z, hold down Control. I'll select this vertice and this one. G, Z, bring these down. Maybe I'll select this vertice here. G, Z, again, hold down Control. And I'll bring it up to round about there. I'll then box select all of these vertices. I'm going to hit X and we'll delete the vertices. I'll tap out of edit mode. I'll navigate to my modifier tab over here. I'm going to click add modifier. We go to generate and we'll choose mirror. Tab into edit mode. Shift A. We'll go mesh and we choose plane. RX90. I'll hit enter. I'll hit S to scale it down. I'm going to hold down Control to snap it in increments. I'll hit G and I'm going to grab it to around about there. I'll select this vertice, G, and I'm going to bring it down to, let's say, around about there. I'll select this vertice, I'm going to hit G, and I'm going to bring it down to around about there. And maybe I'll select this vertice, I'm going to hit G, and I'm going to bring it up to around about there. I'll then hit Control L, and that will select all the linked vertices. I'll hit S just to scale it down. I hit G, bring it up to around about there perhaps. In fact, I'm not entirely happy with this, so I'm going to select this vertice here, G, and I'm just going to bring it out to, let's say, around about there, and just shimmy these around until you've got something that you like. I'm going to go with something around there. I'll then hit Shift A, we'll add Mesh Plane, RX90, hit Enter. I'll hit S to scale, and I'll just bring this down to around about there. I'm going to hit G, snap it to the grid. I'm just going to hide my camera from the 3D viewport. I'm going to box select these two vertices here. I'm going to hit G, X, hold down Control, snap it to the grid to around about there. I'll then navigate to my Modifiers tab over here, and I'll enable clipping. I'll select this vertex here, G, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it to around about there. Maybe I can select that entire object, so I'm going to hit Control L. I'll then hit S just to scale it in, G, Z. I'll then select this point. I'm going to hit G, Z, and I'm going to drag it down to around about there. Tab out of edit mode. You should probably work on your face for a bit longer, give it a bit more time, and create something a bit better than this. This is just for demonstration purposes only. I'll navigate to my modifier over here. I'm going to click this button and I'll click apply. I'll then tab into edit mode. I'll select all the vertices. I'm going to hit M and I'll choose by distance, and that will merge any doubles that we've got in our scene. I'll then tab out of edit mode. I'll navigate to my outliner and re-enable the sweet dumpling pumpkin. I'll then select the face. I'm going to hit S just to scale it down to round about there. Maybe I can scale it up a little bit more, so I'm going to hit S, hit G, Z, just line it up with your pumpkin. So I'm going to have it around about there perhaps. I'll then hit numpad 3 to go into side view. I'll toggle on wireframe view, G, Y. I'm going to hold down Control, snap it in increments, and I'm going to bring it to just the front of the pumpkin here. I'll then go back into solid view. I'll select the pumpkin. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate. I'll navigate to the outliner and I'll hide the original pumpkin from the 3D viewport. So you should have two pumpkins, and this is in case anything goes wrong. You've always got the original pumpkin, and also if you want to create more carvings. There's a couple of ways we can carve out the face into this pumpkin with this object. One way is using knife project, but I found that to be a bit glitchy. It's not working for me at the moment, so I'm going to use a boolean modifier. So with the face object selected, I'm going to tab into edit mode. So with all the vertices selected, I'm going to hit E, Y, and I'm just going to bring this out to round about here. I'll then tab out of edit mode. For this to work properly, we need our normals pointing in the right direction, and to check your normals, we'll navigate to the overlays up here. We'll click this arrow and enable face orientation. I'll then tab into edit mode. I'm going to select all my vertices, and if for some reason all your vertices are red, if I go to normals and flip, and if they're red, you'll need to flip them. So go to mesh, normals, and choose flip, and all the normals should be blue or grey depending on what version of Blender you're using. I'll then tab out of edit mode. I'll then select that object. I'll then hit G, Y, and I'm just going to intersect this face into the pumpkin, but not so it's coming out of the back. I'll then select the pumpkin object. I'll then navigate to my modifiers tab over here. We'll click add modifier. We go to generate and we choose boolean. I'll then click the eyedropper tool and I'll select this face carve object here. I'm going to keep it on exact. I'll then click this arrow and click apply. I'll then select this face object. I'll navigate to my outliner. I'm going to click this button here and I'll enable all the filters. And for this face carve object, I'm going to disable it from viewport and from render. Now with my pumpkin selected, I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to hit 3 for face select. I'll select this face. I'm going to hold down shift, left click, select this face. We'll select this one, hold down shift and select this one. And I'm going to do the same for all of these inner faces here. Once you've got all those faces selected, I'm going to hit 1 for vertices select mode. I'll then hit delete and we'll choose vertices. As you would expect, the topology from this boolean operation is absolutely terrible. If we were to add a Solidify modifier onto this at the moment, it would explode. So we need to clean up the topology in order to use the modifier. The topology isn't going to be perfect by any shot, but we'll make it so it's sufficient enough to use the modifiers. Now of course, we don't need to do both sides of this pumpkin. We only need to do one side, and then we can add a mirror modifier. Therefore, I'm going to enable X-ray view. I'll then box select this half of the pumpkin. I'll hit X, and we'll choose delete vertices. We might have a few stranglers lying about, like down here for example. So I'm going to select that vertice. I'm going to hit delete. I'll then select these vertices here, and I'll also hit delete. Oh, we got one there. So just ensure that all the vertices are selected on this side of the mesh. Okay, I'll exit out of X-ray view. I'm going to start working on this eye up here. So essentially, what I'm looking out for are vertices that are really close together, like here, for example. So I'm going to select this vertice here. I'm going to hit numpad period to zoom into that object. I'll then select this vertice, double tap G for vertice slide, and I'll slide that vertice into that vertice. I'll then select this vertice. I'll double tap G and slide this into there. We might get away with these two vertices here because they're quite far apart. We've got two vertices down here. So I'll select this vertice. I'll double tap G to slide it into this other one. this is going to be a problem one. So I'll select this vertex here. I'll double tap G. I'll slide that over to there. This would be a problem. So I'll select this vertex. I'll double tap G and I'll slide this into there. I'll then select this vertex. I'll double tap G and I'll slide this into here. This could be a problem. Probably not, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to double tap G and I'll bring this down to here. We're going to have some problems up here too. So I'll select this vertex. I'm going to double tap G. I'll slide this into there. I'll select this vertex. I'll double tap G and I'll slide this up to here. Maybe I'll select this vertex. I'm going to hold down Shift and select this vertex. I'll then hit S for scale and I'll hit 0 to scale it to 0. I'll then hit Enter. Maybe I can do the same with these two vertices here. So I'll hit S, 0, Enter. Maybe I can do it with these two. So I'll select this vertex, Shift select this one, hit S, 0, hit Enter. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. I'll now work on the nose. So I'll take this vertex, I'm going to double tap G, bring it up to there. I'll select this vertex, I'm going to double tap G and bring it up to there. I'll select this vertex, I'm going to double tap G, bring it down to here. I'll select this vertex, I'm going to double tap G, bring it down to there. Maybe I can select this vertex here, I'll double tap G, bring it up to there. And we're just going to continue moving these around. Okay, this is definitely going to be a problem down here. So I'll select this vertex, double tap G, and slide this one. I'll select this one, double tap G, and slide it into there. I'll select this vertex, again, I'll double tap G, and I'll just bring this into there. Maybe for these two, I'll just hit S, 0. I'll do the same for these two, S, 0. Maybe I'll do the same for these two, so that's S, 0, and I'll do the same for these two. This could be a bit of a problem here, but I'll leave that just for now. We might be able to get away with that. Maybe I can join these two, so I'm going to hit S, 0. For this one, I'm going to select this vertex, I'm going to double tap G to bring it down to here. I'll then select this vertex, I'll double tap G, and I'll bring it into there. We've got two vertices here, so I'll select this one. I'm going to double tap G, slide it into there. Maybe for this one, I'm going to slide this one into that top one. I'll select this one and slide this into the top one. I'll select this vertex, I'm going to slide this over here. I'll then select this vertex and slide this over here. I could select this vertex, I'll double tap G, bring this down to here. I'll select this one, double tap G, and I'll bring it down to there. This could be a problem here. I'm going to select this vertex, I'm going to double tap G, slide it up to there. I'll then select this vertex, double tap G, and slide that into there. Again, a corner like this might cause problems, but we'll deal with that if we have any problems. Two vertices here, really close, so I'll select this one, I'll double tap G, and I'll collapse it into there. We've got three vertices really close to each other here. So for this one, I'm going to double tap G and slide it up to there. I'll then select this one, double tap G and slide it up to there. We've got a couple in close proximity here, so I'll select this one. I'm going to hold down Shift, left click, select this one. I'm going to hit S, 0, hit Enter, and we might have some problems up here. I'll select this vertex, I'm going to double tap G, slide it over to there. I'll select this one and slide this one down to here. Okay, we might have some problems over here. So with this vertex selected, I'm going to double tap G, slide it over to there. I'll then select this vertex, double tap G, slide it down to here. They're quite far apart. We might be able to get away with that. I'll select this vertex, I'll double tap G, and slide it into there. I might join these two together. So I'll select these two vertices, I'm going to hit S, 0, hit Enter. And maybe I'll select this vertex here, I'll double tap G and slide these into there. I'll then select this one. So with this vertex selected, I'm going to double tap G and slide it into here. I'll select this one, I'll slide this into there, and I'll select this one and slide this one into here. Okay, it looks like we might have multiple vertices in this spot here. So with this vertex selected, I'm going to double tap G, bring this up to there. I'll then select this one, double tap G and slide it into there. And the same up here. So I'll select this vertex, we'll slide it into here. I'll select this one, we'll slide it into there. I'll select this one, I'm going to double tap G, bring this into there, and the rest should be okay. So we are going to have some problem areas. For example, this area here could be a problem, or anywhere with an indentation. But let's just see how we go. I'll then hit numpad 1. I'm going to hit A to select all the vertices. I'm going to hit M and we choose merge by distance. And that's removed 59 vertices. And the merge distance I've got set is 0.0001. I'll then tab out of edit mode. So from here, I'm going to go to add modifier. We go to generate and we'll choose mirror. Enable clipping. Make sure you've got merge selected. I'll then click this arrow button and apply the modifier. I'll navigate to my overlays up here and I'll disable face orientation. I'll then tab into edit mode. And now I need to select the entire edge loop for this eye socket. So I'm going to left click select that vertice. I'm going to hold down shift out and left click select the edge loop. I'll do the same for this edge loop. Hold down shift, left click select. I'll do the same for here. And I'll hold down shift and left click select this vertice here. With that edge loop selected, I'm going to hit F to fill. I'll now do the same for this eye socket. So I'll hold down shift out and left click select the edge loop. Hold down shift, select this one. Do the same for this one. And with the edge loop selected on that eye socket, I'm going to hit F to fill. I'll do the same for the nose. We'll then hit F for fill. And repeat that process for the mouth. So I've got all the vertices around my mouth selected, but you can see we've got these faces selected here. We don't want that, so we're going to hit number 2. I'll then hold down shift, left click select that edge there. So we haven't got the entire triangle selected. I'll do the same for this one. Hold down shift, left click select, and we'll just make sure that we haven't got any more selected. So I'll deselect that edge and I'll deselect that edge. And with the mouth edge loop selected, I'm going to hit F to fill. And from here, I'm going to hit I to inset. And I'm just going to bring it in ever so slightly to around about there perhaps. We're just going to make sure that we've got no intersection problems. If we have, we can fix those. Okay, that's looking quite good. And with your inset faces in the bottom left, you should have this menu here. It might be collapsed. If so, expand those options. And then in the thickness, I'm going to type in 0.005. I'll then hit number 3 for face select. I'm going to select this nose object. I'm going to hit I, and I'm just going to bring this in ever so slightly. And again, for the thickness, I'm going to type in 0.005. I'll then select this eye. I'm going to hold down shift, left click select this eye. I'm going to hit I to inset. I'll bring it in to around about there. And again, the thickness I'm going to set to 0.005. These two vertices are dangerously close to each other, so we need to sort that out before we add the Solidify modifier. So I'll hit number 1 for vertice select. I'll select this vertice. I'm going to double tap G just to bring it across to round about there, just so there's a bit of a distance between the two vertices. I'll also check the other vertices. Okay, that's not too bad. And we'll do the same for this one over here. So I'll select this vertice. I'm going to double tap G, just bring this down to around about there. I'll just check the nose. These two are quite close, but it's not too bad. These ones are pretty close, so maybe I'll select this vertice. I'm going to hit G twice, bring it down, select this one, double tap G, just bring this down. Maybe I can do the same for these ones. So I'm going to select both of them. I'm going to double tap G, just bring them down to around about there. Select this one, hold down shift and select this one. I'm just going to hit numpad period to zoom into that object. I'm going to double tap G, just bring these up ever so slightly. This might cause us a problem, so I'll select this vertice here. I'm going to double tap G, just bring this up ever so slightly, around about there. Okay, I'm just inspecting. We've got a problem here. I'm not really sure what's going on here. I'm just going to hit numpad period to zoom into that object. I think this is a stray vertice. Yep, so with that vertice selected, I'm going to hit Control X, and that will dissolve that vertice. So that means we're going to have the same problem on the other side because this was mirrored. So I'll navigate over to here. I'm going to find that stray vertice. I'll hit numpad period to zoom into that object. I'll then hit Control X and dissolve that. That seems to be okay. I'm going to hit number 3 for face select. I'll select the mouth face. I'm going to hold down shift, left click select the nose, hold down shift and left click select both of the eyes. I'll then hit delete and we choose faces. I'll then tab out of edit mode. As you can see, we are getting some shading issues around here, and that's due to these edge loops that we made. So if I just hit number 1 for vertice select, I'll select one of these vertices. I'll then hit numpad period to zoom into that object. And you can see the reason why these shading issues are happening is basically because these vertices are set inward from these outer loops. So maybe we can use a shrinkwrap modifier to fix this. So I'll tab out of edit mode, and in my outliner, I'll unhide the original pumpkin object. I'll select the pumpkin with the face carved out. I'll just hit S, and I'm going to scale out ever so slightly to around about there. I'll then navigate to my Modifiers tab over here. I'll click Add Modifier, we go to Deform, and we'll choose Shrinkwrap. And the target will be that Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin 001. I'll then apply the Shrinkwrap modifier. I'll hide the Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin .001. And now this pumpkin is ready for the Solidify modifier. So I'll navigate to my Modifiers tab over here. I'm going to click Add Modifier, we go to Generate, and we'll choose Solidify. I'm going to change the thickness to, let's say, 0.1. And maybe to smooth out this carving a bit more, I'm going to go Add Modifier, we go to Generate, and I'm going to choose Subdivision Surface. I'll set the render levels to 1. And with the pumpkin object selected, I'm going to navigate to my Materials tab down here. I'll then click this plus button up here to add a new material slot. I'll click New to add a new material, and I'll rename this material to Inside. I'll then change the base colour to orange, maybe something around there. And I'll go back to my Modifiers tab. I'll navigate into Rendered View, and on your Solidify modifier, navigate to where it says Materials, expand those options, and change the material offset and the rim offset to 1. And essentially, what that's done, if I go back to my Material tab over here, so this first material, Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin, that's material 0, and this second material, which says Inside, is material 1, and that's reflected on the Solidify modifier down here. I'll select the pumpkin lid. I'm going to hold down Shift, left click, select the pumpkin. I'll hit Control L, and we're going to copy modifiers. I'll then select the pumpkin lid. I'll navigate to my Materials tab over here. I'll click this plus button, and instead of clicking New, I'll click here, and we'll choose that Inside material. I'll just hit numpad 1 to go into front view. And now, if I hit G, you can see that the pumpkin lid has got the same modifiers and same materials as the pumpkin itself. Excellent. I'll just escape that back into its original position. I think we need to start setting up the parents now. So I'll select this stalk. I'll then hold down Shift and left click select the lid. I'll then hit Control P, and we'll choose Object, Keep Transform. So now if I grab the lid, you can see that the stalk follows along with it. And with the lid selected, I'll hold down Shift, left click select the pumpkin. I'll hit Control P, and we'll choose Object, Keep Transform. And now if I grab the pumpkin and hit G, you can see that everything follows. Excellent. With my pumpkin selected, I'm going to hit G, Z, hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it level with the horizon. So it's on the horizon here. Okay, excellent. I'm going to select my default light. I'm going to hit Delete. I'll then orbit round, Shift A, I'm going to go Mesh, and I'm going to choose Plane. And with the plane selected, I'm going to tab into Edit Mode. I'm going to hit S10, hit Enter. Maybe I'll hit S2, Enter, and then I'll tab out of Edit Mode. I'll navigate to the Material tab over here. I'm going to click New. I'll rename the material to Ground. I'll change the base colour to black, and maybe I'll increase the roughness to, let's say, 0.75. And with the ground plane selected, I'm going to hit Control 4, and that will add a subdivision surface at level 4. I'll then navigate to my Modifiers tab over here, and I'll increase the renders to 4. I'll just hit numpad 0 to go into camera view. I'll re-enable my camera in my outliner. I'll select my camera. I'll then move my camera on the Z-axis to, let's say, 2 meters. I'm going to set the X rotation to 90 degrees. And instead of using the X rotation, I'm going to go to my camera data over here, and I'm going to decrease the tilt shift on the Y-axis. We'll then navigate to the shading panel up here. We'll enable Scene Lights and Scene World. I'm going to go to my World settings over here, and I'll adjust the strength to 0. I'll then hit Shift A, I'll go to Light, and I'll choose Point. I'm going to hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'll then hit G, Z, I'm going to hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring the light up to around about there. I'll just hit numpad 0 to go into camera view. I'm going to go to my light data tab over here, and I'm going to increase the power to, let's say, 50 watts. Maybe we can give it a slight yellow colour, just to replicate a candle. I'll just select the pumpkin. I'm going to increase my shader editor. And for the inside material, on your Principled BSDF, navigate to where it says Subsurface, expand those options, and increase the weight to something around 0.1. I'll also change the base colour to maybe more of a yellow colour, something around there. I'll navigate into Solid View. I'm going to hit Shift A, I'm going to go Light, and I'm going to choose Area. I'm going to hit numpad 3 to go into Side View, G, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it to around about there. I'll then hit R, hold down Control, snap it to the grid, and I'm going to point it directly towards the pumpkin. I'll hit numpad 0 to go into camera view. I'm going to go to my light data tab over here. I'll change the shape from square to disc. I'll then navigate into rendered view. I'll then increase the power to around about 50 watts. In my 3D viewport, I'm going to hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'll then hit G, X, hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it to around about there. I'll then hit R, hold down Control to snap it into the grid, and I'll point the area light directly towards the pumpkin. I'll just hit numpad 0 to go into camera view. I'll hit numpad 7 to go into top view. Shift A, I'm going to go light, and I'll choose point light. G, hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it to around about there. I'll then hit numpad 1 to go into front view. G, Z, hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to bring it to around about there. Numpad 0 to go into camera view, and with that point light selected, I'm going to change the colour to a purple colour, something around there. Maybe I'll increase the strength to 25 watts. I'll increase the radius to 1 meter. Maybe I can increase the power to 50 watts. Adjust the colour slightly, so I'm going to go more of a blue tone, something around there. Excellent. I'm going to add one more light to the scene, so I hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'm going to hit Shift A, we go light, and we'll choose point light. G, Y, hold down Control to snap it to the grid, and I'm going to take it to around about there perhaps. Numpad 1 to go into front view. G, Z, hold down Control, snap it in increments, and I'm going to bring it up to around about there. I'll then hit numpad 0 to go into camera view. I'm going to increase the strength to, let's say, 50 watts, and I'm going to change the colour to an orange colour. Maybe something around there perhaps. I'll also increase the radius to 1 meter, and maybe I can increase the power to 100 watts. Maybe I can reduce the radius to 0.5. Maybe I can increase the power to 250 watts. Okay, that's looking a bit better. I'll navigate to my Object Data tab over here, and I'm going to set the Z location to 3 meters, and maybe I'll set the Y location to 3 meters. I'll then navigate to my Output tab over here. I'm going to enable Render Region. I'm going to set the frame rate to 30 frames per second. I'll navigate to my Render tab over here. I'm going to set the max samples to 2048. I'll then navigate to Light Paths, expand these options. I'll disable Reflective and Refractive Caustics. I'll navigate to Material View up here. I'll then click this arrow and I'll enable Scene Lights and Scene World. I'll hit Ctrl S to save the project. And before I render out a test frame, I'm going to ensure that my Sweet Dumpling Pumpkin copy is disabled from Viewport and from Render. Also, do the same for your face carve object. I'll toggle on Rendered View. I'm not entirely happy with this internal material, so I'm going to select the pumpkin. Make sure that you've got your inside material selected. Shift A, I'm going to go Texture, and we'll choose Noise Texture. I'll change it from 3D to 4D, and with the noise texture selected, I'm going to hit Ctrl T, and that will add a texture coordinate and a mapping node. I'll then change the coordinates from Generated to Object. I'll then hit Shift A, I'm going to go Vector, and I'll choose Bump, and I'll pop that down there. I'll connect the factor from the noise texture into the height of the bump node. I'll then plug the normal socket from the bump node into the normal socket of the principal BSDF. I'll increase the distance on the bump node to 0.1. I'll increase the scale on the noise texture to 10, and maybe I can set the detail to 4. I'll then connect the factor socket from the noise texture into the roughness socket of the principal BSDF. Shift A, I'm going to go Converter, and I'll choose Color Ramp, and I'll pop that in between there. And for this black flag, I'm going to change the value to around about 0.333. And then on the noise texture, maybe I can set the distortion to 5. And I think I'll reduce the distance on the bump node to 0.025. I'm still not entirely happy with this lighting, so in my outliner, I'm going to select the area light. I'll navigate to my Light Data tab down here, and I think I'll increase the strength of that lamp to 100 watts. I'll hit Ctrl S to save the project. I'll navigate into Solid View. I'll just hit F12 to render out a test frame. When that's rendered, click Escape. We'll navigate to the Compositing tab up here. We'll enable Use Nodes, hit N to open up the N panel, and then navigate to where it says View. Enable Backdrop. We'll then decrease the timeline, and we'll click Fit. I'll then hit N to hide the N panel. Hit Shift A, we go Filter, and choose Sunbeams, and I'll pop that there. We'll just drag this down to here. Shift A, we go Color, we choose Mix, and we choose Mix Color, and I'll pop that in there. I'll then connect the sunbeams into socket B, and I'll connect the original image into socket A. I'll just drag this up here. I'll then reduce the factor to 0.1. I'll select the sunbeams, and for the Y location, I'm just going to reduce this down so the X is bang in the middle of the nose. I might even reduce the mix factor to 0.05, just so it's subtle. I'll then hit Shift A, I'm going to go Filter, and I'll choose Glare, and I'll pop that in between there. I'm going to change it from Streaks to Fog Glow. I'll just drag this across over to here. I'll decrease the strength to 0.5, and maybe I can reduce the size of the glare to 0.25. I want to add a vignette to this, so I'm going to box select all of these nodes here. I'm going to hit G, bring these across. I'll then hit Shift A, I'm going to go mask and choose ellipse mask, and I'll pop that there. I'll increase the size on the x-axis to around about there, and I'll increase the size on the y-axis to around about there. I'll just drag this ellipse mask over to here. I'm going to hit Shift A, I'm going to go color, and I'll choose mix, and we'll choose mix color, and I'll pop that in there. I'll then plug the mask from the ellipse mask into the factor of the mix color node. I'll then connect the image socket from the glare node into socket B, and I'll set socket A to black. Shift A, filter, blur, and we'll choose blur, and I'll pop that in between the ellipse mask and the mix color node. I'm going to change it from Gaussian to fast Gaussian, and I'm going to increase the size to 250. Maybe we can add a bit of lens distortion in the mix. So I'll hit Shift A, I'm going to go transform, and we'll choose lens distortion, and I'll pop that in between there. I'll enable fit, and I'll set the dispersion to 0.05. I'll just navigate back to my layout view over here. I'll then navigate to my output tab, navigate to where it says output, click this file icon, select the file location where you want to save your image, and then click accept. Choose a file format of your choice. I'm going to go with PNG set to RGB and 16-bit. Instead of rendering this out as a still image, I might render this out as an animation loop. So I'm going to take my node editor, I'm going to drag this down to give us a bit more room. I'll then change this from the shader editor to the timeline. I'll then navigate to the bottom left of my 3D viewport until I see a crosshair. I'll left click and drag up and open up a new window. I'll then change this from the 3D viewport to the graph editor. I'm going to ensure that I'm on frame 1. I'll then set the end frame to 240. So we got 240 frames in the timeline. I'll hit N to hide the end panel. I'll then select my camera and I'm on frame 1. I'll then navigate to my object data tab over here, and I'm going to add keyframes for the X, Y, and Z location and the X, Y, and Z rotation. I'll then navigate to the graph editor. I'm going to expand the camera action data over here, expand the object transform data over here, and for the X location in my graph editor, I'll hit N to open up the end panel. I'll then navigate to where it says modifiers. I'm going to click add modifier and we'll choose noise. I'll then hit play. I'm going to increase the scale on the noise modifier to 50. I'll then enable restrict frame range. I'll expand these options. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to set the start frame to frame 1, the end frame to frame 240 because we got 240 frames in our timeline. I'll blend in over 60 frames and blend out over 60 frames. And maybe I can increase the strength to 2. In my graph editor, I'm going to hold down Control, middle mouse button, and just drag up just so I can see everything in the timeline. So I want my camera to be always pointing at the pumpkin. And if I push play, you can see that the camera's moving left to right. So in reality, we want the camera to rotate on the Z-axis to track the pumpkin. So I can take this X location noise modifier. I'll click this button to copy. I'll then navigate over here and I'll select Z rotation. I'll then click paste. If I hit play, you can see that it's going a bit crazy. But we can reduce the strength on the Z rotation so the pumpkin is always center to the camera. So I'll just keep reducing this number here until the pumpkin is center. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that. So I'll select this X location. I'll then copy the noise modifier once again. I'll then select the Z location and I'll paste the modifier in here. I'll then click the spanner for the X location and click the spanner for the Z rotation, and that will mute those modifiers temporarily. And now if I hit play, you can see that the camera is moving up and down. But we want to offset the noise pattern so it's not the same pattern as the X location and Z rotation. And so on your noise modifier over here, we're going to set the offset to 1000. And now that should have a completely different seed, and maybe we can reduce the strength to around about 1. So if I hit play, you should see that this bobs up and down. Excellent. So where this is bobbing up and down, to keep the pumpkin center to the camera, we need to rotate the camera on the X-axis. So with the Z location selected in your graph editor, we'll navigate over to the modifiers. We'll click this button to copy the modifier. We'll navigate over to the X rotation. We'll select the X rotation. We'll then click this button here and paste that modifier onto the X rotation. I'll then hit play. And now all we have to do is reduce the strength. We might have to go into the minus figures here. There we go. So I've got minus 0.2. I'll just skip back to frame 1. I'll then navigate to the X rotation and Z location, and I'll click the spanner icons to mute the modifiers. I'll select the Y location. I'll then navigate to the modifiers tab over here. I'm going to click this button to paste the noise modifier. I'll then change the offset to 2000. We'll then hit play, and you can see that the camera is moving closer and further away. Maybe we can increase the strength to 2. I'll just skip back to frame 1, navigate to the object transform. I'll click the spanner icon for the X location, I'll click the spanner for the Z location, for the X rotation and for the Z rotation. I'll then hit play just to see what we've got. So this should loop seamlessly, excellent. I'll then hit Ctrl S to save the project, and then it's simply a case of hitting Ctrl F12 and that will render out your image sequence. Join me on Patreon as a free member and you'll have access to this file alongside other Blender files from previous tutorials. That's the tutorial in a nutshell. I hope you found this useful. If you did, please click like and subscribe. It really helps my channel. Have a great day, level up, and thanks for watching.